that's really where a lot of like my mind and my language, my skills, my gifts were really refined. Because when you have a person sitting across from you who's been in prison for killing someone, and he's sent you 3 notes telling you he's going to kill you, and then I decided to go find him in the project so that he didn't have to come look for me. We may all live to 75, but we will not all live the same amount of life. Because if you move forward really slowly, you'll barely have lived one life in 75 years.
Wow.
But if you move forward with intentionality and purpose, you're going to live a life that's worth 200 by 75.
Come on.
You know, and that for me is really exciting.
What's up, Anointed Ones? This is David Carpenter.
And this is Jacob Valdelon.
And welcome back. We missed you guys. Wow, we're so excited for today's episode with our special guest and Erwin Mcmanus. Wow.
It's good to be here with you guys.
It's going to be amazing. I just want to share, how I actually found you, and it was super impactful. Immediately, just someone posted a video of you talking about communication and your leadership style, and immediately I was joined just based on your heart posture, how obviously you're developed. But looking at your page, I was just immediately drawn to you, and I messaged you, and you were talking about the arena. And I thought that was such a great opportunity for entrepreneurs that want to learn communication, want to develop their skills with leadership development. And it's just been amazing. So highly suggest it, highly recommend it. But Erwin is a pastor at Mosaic Church, number 1. Number 2, he's a best-selling author, speaker, well-known around the world, entrepreneur, clothing brand, amazing father, amazing husband, just overall incredible person. So we're just so thankful to have you here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here with you guys. Excited about your journey. I know this is brand new, and hopefully the launch will be great, and you'll impact a lot of people.
Thank you.
Amen.
Well, the first question we have for you is really to dive in on your relationship with Jesus. When you went fully all in, and how that made a statement in your life. I'd love to hear that.
I'm from a small country called El Salvador, and I think everyone in El Salvador was Roman Catholic.
There you go.
But it's the same as being like Latin. It's just something you're born. You may not ever think about it.
Yes.
And my family was basically irreligious, not against religion, just it wasn't a conversation in our house.
Yeah.
And my mom was always in a spiritual search. I remember when she brought a Buddha home, and she became Buddhist for a season. And then when she was reading the works of Rabbi Kishner and became Jewish. And so my mom was always like on a spiritual pilgrimage, on a search, trying to find meaning to life, and had a pretty challenging life. And she was married when she was around 16, had me and my brother by the time she was 20.
Wow.
Divorced by the time she was 20 and 21. And just having to figure out how to survive in the world. So when you go through a lot of hardship and there's a lot of pain, it's kind of hard to figure out where God fits into it all.
For sure.
But she was always trying to search for any possibility that there was someone out there who cared about her. And so I think her spiritual curiosity affected me. When she was 40 years old, she called me up. I was in college. And she said, "Hey, honey, I just want you to know that I'm a Christian." I had no idea what that was.
Wow.
She could have said I joined the Peace Corps. It had no meaning to me at all.
Yeah.
But she sounded happy, so I was happy for her.
Wow.
So whatever it was, I thought, okay, my mom she deserves some happiness in her life.
Yeah.
And I didn't know she started going to this church in Orlando, Florida. I didn't understand that being a Christian was a part of a religion. I didn't know. I didn't even know it was really connected to Jesus. There's just I was a blank slate, you know. And I went home for the summer from school, and all of a sudden they were all going to church, and my 2 younger sisters were going, and it seemed like suddenly they were like mesmerized by this belief system, and I thought this feels a little cultic to me, and maybe a little nervous. When you're looking at it from the outside, it can seem kind of weird,
Yes.
And so it looked a little weird. And my brother's older than me, but we were in school together, the same grade all of our lives.
Love it.
But he was an atheist, and he starts going to church, which I thought was really weird, for an atheist.
Wow.
And I saw him reading the Bible, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, if I become a person of faith, it'll be an intellectual decision, not an emotional one." And I said, "You're lying. You're just about ready to fall, and you're just trying to make an excuse." So I saw giving your life to anything religious was kind of a sign of weakness, or you finally like gave up or gave in or something. And so I pressed into him and I said, "Why are you really going to church?" And he said, "I trust this guy who invited me. He told me there'd be beautiful girls and great volleyball."
Often true, especially a
There you go. There you
Or
go.
Mosaic.
And,
I'm sure.
And he goes, "The girls are beautiful and the volleyball is decent."
That's funny.
So I thought I could use a little religion.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
In my life. So I started playing volleyball.
Yeah.
With these people and going to events.
I love volleyball.
trying to meet girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing deep.
That's so funny.
I wasn't trying to answer the big questions of life other than, what am I going to do Friday night?
Yeah.
And it was an interesting process for me because I like these people. I actually thought they had something very special. I know a lot of people grow up in church and they have a very negative experience. I'm the opposite.
Sure.
I didn't grow up in church, and the moment I met people who believed in God, believed in Jesus, I had a really wonderful experience. They were kind and happy, joyful, sincere. But I would argue with them about God, and they didn't really have great answers, and they go, "Oh, I don't know the answer to that, Erwin. I just know that, God loves me, and I'm going to be in heaven when I die." And I go, "That's not acceptable. If I win the argument, you have to stop believing." But it didn't work out like that, which was really irritating to me. And yet I would leave going, I don't know if they're right, but I like them better than I like me. And they seem to have something that I'm not only missing, but wanting. And so I started slipping in the back, of church experience and, staying away from the front. I didn't want anything to happen to me.
No altar calls?
I was like just trying to, play it safe and,
That's the God converting.
keep my distance, but still like observe and see what's going on. And then my brother, who, as long as I knew him, was an atheist. He gave his life to Jesus. And I thought, this is very weird, that my brother would give his life to Jesus, and my two sisters had given their lives to Jesus, and then my mom also had done that. She was first, and I was the outsider. I'm
Really?
Like, and I think it made me a little more resistant because I'm like, I'm not a joiner.
Wow.
And so now that they're all in, I'm like, I don't think this is for me. And it would be really funny because my sisters were young and they'd come crying, "We want you to go to heaven with us." And I go, "Who told you I wasn't going?"
Wow.
That's funny.
Who gave you the list? And so I don't think Christians realize how weird they are.
Yeah, for sure.
And how many assumptions Christians make when talking to people who don't believe.
For sure.
Like it can sound so judgmental.
Completely.
When you're saying, "You're going to hell. I just want you to go to heaven with us." Like who
That's
told
wild.
you?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I got my little sisters telling me that.
Wow.
And now my brother now reading the Bible, and all of a sudden he's like deeply like committed. He was an all-in kind of guy.
Wow.
And for me, I flew my girlfriend in to try to get my brain out of this God thing.
Yeah.
'Cause I thought, okay, I'll get my girlfriend here. That'll get me in the right space. And I dated her for 2 years before that, and she'd never seen me cry.
Wow.
And I remember I got a flat tire and I just sat on the side of the road and I just started to cry. But it's not about the flat tire. I started to cry because I realized she's not feeling that vacuum in my life. And it's not her fault. So I put her on a plane and flew her back home. And decided I needed to figure this God thing out.
Wow.
And I remember it was for me. It was I remember the day. It was an evening on August 20th, 1978.
Wow.
I made a decision to at least have a conversation about who Jesus was, and I just like, I don't know if this is real. A lot of people say, "Oh, I studied the Bible." I didn't. I had never seen a Bible in my whole life. So I just prayed a prayer and I said, "God, if you're real, in Jesus, if you're actually out there, I'm in." Like, I just don't know. But I want to know, and if you're real, I'm yours. And I don't even know how to explain it, but it was a very like transcendent moment for me. Like, in that moment, I had no doubt that God existed and that Jesus was real. And it makes me so nervous to say that because it's so irrational. It's not. I'm a very like rational, logical, kind of like maybe mildly intellectual person.
Come on, a little bit more than mine.
Yeah,
for sure.
And now I'm believing something. I don't have any journey of intellect to get me there. I just had this encounter with God that I can't explain, and it was radical. It radicalized me like instantly. I maybe that's a bad word to use, but I couldn't see the world outside of God. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
From that moment forward, I went back. What's funny is I came to faith on a Sunday. I led someone to faith on Friday in a prison, and no one taught me how to do that. I just,
what the heck?
Someone prayed with me and helped me give my life to Jesus, and that was the only experience I had. And I remember going to this prison with all these students. Mostly I was going because I was trying to pick up this girl. Yeah. And I asked her on a date, and she said, "Hey, I'm going to the prison on Friday. Do you want to go with me?" So my first date as a Christian was a prison date. So
sounds like she was worth it.
Yeah.
What's crazy is that all these Christians were sitting on one side, and all these convicts came in and were sitting on the other side. And the Christians were terrified because they all looked like Ken and Barbie.
For sure.
They're just sweet, good kids, who'd probably never seen a cigarette,
Wow.
And then all these convicts were there, and I was the only person sitting in between the two because I didn't know who I fit with. And then they put us at tables, and I was talking to this one group, and this one convict went and got his food, and they realized, oh, that table doesn't have like someone who can talk to them, because they didn't think I was the person that could talk to anybody, because I was brand new. I'd only given my life to Jesus 5 days before. So some Christian came and took that convict's seat. I didn't know a lot about God, but I knew a lot about feeling isolated, alone, and being left out. And I noticed that convict, when he started coming back, saw his seat was taken and went and stood up against a wall. So I got up and I went over to him, and I remember saying, "Hey man, I'm sorry they took your seat. You can have my seat." And he goes, "No, I'm good." And I said, "Hey, I don't know really a whole lot about God, but if you're interested, I'd like to tell you, what just happened to me." And he goes, "I'm listening."
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do really. Like, when he said, "I'm listening," I thought, "Oh,
God,
he's interested."
Are you serious?
And I know it sounds crazy, but from Sunday night to Friday, I had already memorized a significant, portion of the Bible.
No way.
And so,
oh my gosh.
And I was memorizing things really fast, and I have a little bit of an eidetic memory, so things stay in images in my head. And so I'm like going through this, telling this guy, "Hey, in the book of Romans it says," I don't even know how I know what book of Romans. I just, they gave me these flashcards with all these verses. I just
maybe we should get on that.
Memorize them.
Yeah.
And the guy goes, "Oh, I can't read anyway." So I go, "Oh." Now I could just sort of like go, because I couldn't find it in the Bible, because I knew there were all these verses in Romans, but no one told me where Romans was, and I didn't know there was
What's
a
an
table
Old
of
Testament
contents.
versus New Testament?
I'm looking back there with Kings, Judges, Romans. It should be in the Old Testament, right? But it wasn't, so I couldn't find it. He goes, "I can't read," and I just opened up anywhere, and I started quoting all the verses I'd learned.
Wow.
And then when we finished, he said, "I'd like to give my life to Jesus," and I prayed with him, and I only learned that prayer, in a sense, when they asked me to pray to give my life to Jesus, and I remembered it. And then they all wanted to go to the football game afterwards, and I'm like, "No, let's stay." I was like, I just want to stay and talk to everyone about Jesus, and they said, no, we got to go. And I remember going to that football game and not caring at all about the date, not caring about the game.
Wow.
All I could think about is there were like 100 prisoners there that desperately needed to have a conversation about how much God loves them and how much they matter. And it really revolutionized my life. And then that Sunday I was baptized.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So I led my first person of faith before I was baptized.
Wow.
And then I got on a bus and I drove back to the University of North Carolina, actually to Elon University at that time.
Yeah.
And went back to school. And this is way too long of a story, but
This is great.
I love it.
This nun, her name was Sister Marge Paulus. I'll never forget.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'd met her one time the year before at Elon because my roommate was Catholic and he wanted me to go to the University Catholic Mass with him.
Yeah.
I did, and this nun, I don't know why, when I walked in, she picked me and she said, I'd like for you to do the scripture reading today. And I looked at this nun and I said, get that book away from me. I don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was her only encounter with me.
Oh my God.
Who is this guy?
And so I come back to Elon and I have a note waiting for me saying Sister Marge Paulus wants to meet with you.
Oh my gosh.
So I reach out to her and we go to like a hamburger, Carl's Jr.
Yeah.
And we sit down and I go, Sister Marge, how do you know me? I've only met you once, and why do you want to meet with me? And she said, we're doing 6 weeks of ecumenical retreats with about 8 churches. And I think you're supposed to be in charge.
Wow.
What?
Oh
my God.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And she goes, I'm asking you to be in charge of the 6 weeks of all these churches coming together.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, why would you ask me? I wouldn't even touch the Bible. And I said, but I need to tell you something, because, worse than like being an atheist, if you're a Roman Catholic, is having been baptized by a Baptist.
Literally.
So I felt like I needed to confess to her and say, hey, Sister Marge, it's worse than you think.
That's so good.
I'm not a nothing anymore.
Yeah.
I was baptized in this Baptist church.
Yeah.
And
So
Sister
funny.
Marge Paulus looked at me and said, God spoke to me in a dream and told me he was going to change your life.
Wow.
And I was supposed to put you in charge. So I ended up leading this whole ecumenical process for a few months after I gave my life to Jesus within 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
So it just seems like God just, it's almost like he was building a road while I was walking forward.
Yeah.
And that was how my journey began. And so I never knew anything outside of something really supernatural. It was, for me, a life full of unexpected miracles and connections and like serendipitous interactions where you just can't explain your life.
Yeah.
I love that. When I hear your story, walking and how Jesus literally had that perfect plan for your life. I remember listening, and I think by the age of 12, you were in a psychiatric chair. Is that correct?
Yeah, by the age of 10
By the age
or
of,
so, yeah.
Right. So looking at your life of not feeling good enough, not being worthy, not even being like literally, you were David in the field being a shepherd boy, right? And Jesse's like, hey, Samuel, look at, and you were out there, right? If you could speak to kind of that knowing when you knew you had the genius, when you knew that this was my calling, this is my gifting, when did God reveal that to you, and how did you start stewarding that in the service of others?
Yeah, I don't think there was ever a point where I thought that I knew I had a genius.
You're like, me?
I love the modesty. Let's go.
I love it. I love the humility, but what you've created
for
now, it's incredible.
Yeah, I think that I knew I had. There's the verse that shaped my life was, I think, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's Jeremiah chapter 20, and I think it's either verse 8 or verse 9, and I can't remember right now, but it says, if I say I will not mention him or speak any longer in his name, his word is in my heart like a burning fire, a fire shut up in my bones. I'm weary of keeping it in. Indeed, I cannot. And that verse reflected what was going on inside of me. It felt like, I didn't feel like, it wasn't like I had an epiphany of, oh, wow, I have this talent.
Yeah.
Or, oh, wow, I have this genius. Or I have this gift. It was, I have this fire that's burning up inside of me. And I think humanity desperately needs what I've just found. So it was never really focused on what I had to bring to the world. It was really focused on, I knew how desperately broken I was.
Come on.
And I thought, and I knew that other people were that desperately broken too. I thought, if I could help someone experience what I'm experiencing, it would give my life meaning.
Wow.
Right? You know, and so I just became compulsively driven, not to convert people. Like I didn't feel like I needed to change your mind. Like that's where I think people sometimes get confused. Like, you know, because I would have people who wanted to debate me, you know, and go,
Come on.
you know, I'm a philosopher, let's debate. And I'm like, you win.
Yeah.
And they get angry with me because I was a philosopher, and they go, why won't you, you know, debate with me? And I'm like, because I'm not trying to fight with you. I'm trying to fight for you.
Come on.
Wow.
You know, and so I only want to answer the questions that really matter to you. Not, you know, because if you want to ask questions to prove you're smarter than me, I tap out, you're smarter than me.
Yep.
Come on.
But if you want to ask questions that are absolutely eating you up because you're desperate for the answers, now I'm willing to dive in and have that conversation. And, you know, and then I spent about 10 years working with the urban poor, with drug cartels, with gangbangers, in the world of drugs and prostitution. And, you know, you don't usually go there if you think you're a genius. You just go there because you think people are desperately needy. And
For sure.
You know, it's just one of those things where I didn't really think that highly of myself. And so I just thought maybe I can find someone who's more desperate than me, you know, someone who needs help more than me. And because you have value the moment you're helping someone who's more messed up than you.
There you go.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, like I'm messed up, but I can find someone more messed up. And I can help them. You know?
Yeah.
And that's really where a lot of like my mind and my language, my skills, my gifts were really refined. Because when you have a person sitting across from you who's been in prison for killing someone, and he's sent you 3 notes telling you he's going to kill you, and then I decided to go find him in the project so that he didn't have to come look for me.
In those 10 years.
Jeez.
Wow.
You know? and so you have to learn how to have conversations with
For sure.
incredibly intense, violent, and surprisingly brilliant people. Because I began realizing, you know, the guys who head up cartels and the guys who are, you know, head up like, you know, gangs, those guys are really smart. They just didn't have the same opportunities other people did, so they used their intelligence to access the economy that was available to them.
Come on.
Because they're not going to work at McDonald's for minimum wage when they can make hundreds of thousands, not millions, running a drug, you know, cartel.
Of course.
And all their examples there. And I just love your heart, the way that you focus on that. Because it's not, Christianity is not about who can memorize the most scriptures. It's, are you living like Christ? Do you have the heart after God? Are you reflecting the image of Jesus? And I love that. And I have a question. Did you start Mosaic shortly after that, or did you become an entrepreneur
Long
before
time
that?
after that.
Long time after that?
No, I've lived like 8 lives.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
And even when I was young, I told myself I can live multiple lives if I live them at the same time.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I would, you know, I had the fashion company and I had a film company and then I ran a tech company and we did a publishing company, which we now have again.
Yeah.
And I started Mosaic. So I had like 6 different things going at the same time because I told myself I don't want to just live one life.
Absolutely.
And so, and my friends want to say, you need focus. You know, you're not focused enough.
Yeah.
I go, yeah, I know. You're gonna be focused and you're gonna be more successful than me. I'm just gonna enjoy life more.
Come on.
That's so good.
You know, and one of these things might actually pop.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you know, I worked as a futurist for 20, 30 years, working with companies, universities, organizations, and that's really where I was early on in my business space. But Mosaic came out of the 90s. I moved to Los Angeles, and I had researched the world when I was in my 20s and determined that Los Angeles was the capital of the future. And so I remember when I was dating Kim, we were 23, 24 years old, and I told her a non-negotiable for me is I'm moving to LA because it's the capital of the future, and I want to be a citizen there.
Wow.
I want to infuse and affect the future of humanity. And so I didn't move to LA for Hollywood in that sense. I didn't move to LA for the ocean, which is so polluted you don't want to swim in it. Anyway,
For sure. Yeah.
I didn't move there
Miami's
for the
not any
air,
different.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, I moved there because it was the epicenter of where creativity and storytelling emerged, and it shaped all the cultures in the world.
Absolutely.
So that's the way I kind of like designed my life. You know,
Life by design.
How do you impact the world in the greatest way possible?
Yeah.
And but In 93, moved to LA.
Yeah.
We were part of a church. It didn't go well. I've never fit in well anywhere. Like
You're not made to.
you know, I'm a bad employee, I guess. You know, I'm unhireable. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I realized, oh, if I'm going to want to eat,
For sure. Yeah.
you know, if
Yeah.
I'm going to have a place in the world, I have to create it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think some people, entrepreneurism is an option. For me, it was essential.
Yes.
I didn't have a choice. In fact, I was
That makes so much sense.
I was a part of an organizational process with a group called Gallup. They do the
Okay.
Gallup polls. I don't know if you're familiar with them, you know. And they do some of the top leadership development in the world. And I was invited to this process with 20 world leaders. And they do this brutal process where there's a dot, then a circle, then a circle.
Okay.
And they say, we're testing you on 24 signature elements of world leaders. And if you fall in the 80 percentile, you're on the outside circle. If you fall in the 20 percentile, you're in the inner circle. And some of you may not have a dot. So out of 24 of them, they said you might have one dot that falls in the top 10% in the world.
Yeah.
And they said, basically, if you don't fall into like the top of the top, we don't have a conversation with you, you can go home.
Wow.
So we're all like in this room.
Oh my God.
I'm getting ready, just hoping we have a dot.
Yeah.
You know, or two dots or maybe
Yeah.
three.
Yeah.
And in that process, I
Pressure.
think I had like 14 out of 22 of the dots were
Oh my
just off the world.
gosh.
And you think that would be like a really encouraging thing, but I was paralyzed.
Wow.
Because they gave everyone
Yeah.
a mentor, and I was the last one. They didn't give me a mentor. I mean, there are people there from Japan, South Africa, all over the world.
Yeah.
And then when the director came in, he was my mentor. And I said, what should I, like, okay, this is amazing, but what does this mean? What should I do with my life? And he looked at me and he said, there's no job created for you. You're going to have to go create your own path.
Wow.
Which is not, it sounds awesome. It sounds so romantic. It sounds
Yeah.
wonderful. It's horrible
Wow.
when you think, no one will hire me. Like, there's no job that fits me right.
Yeah.
You know, even when I became a pastor, it never fit. It was always like a square, and I was this blobby circle.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and so I never fit that very, very well. And even as an entrepreneur or a designer, and I never fit any world naturally. And so I realized, I think a part of the way I'm designed is that the best measure of my success is how other people succeed.
There you go.
You know,
So good.
and I really do think that is probably like my forte. My forte is I'm not the
Based on
best at
impact.
anything in the world. I'm just really good at bringing greatness out of people.
So good.
You know, and I love that.
That's what leaders do.
Yeah.
I love that. And I see everything that you've done already. Your ability after those 10 years working with the cartels, would you say a lot of that where your gifts have like shown up to be able to write the book, like the 7 frequencies of communication? Where did a lot of that development come from?
I also want to dive into that too. I'd love to get into that. You know, what gave you the idea? You know, we've been talking a lot about communication recently. I'd love to.
So many of my books actually came out of that era when I was working with the urban poor and working in the world of drugs and prostitution.
Yeah.
And it's so ironic to me that
Wow.
the books that impact entrepreneurs and business leaders and CEOs and innovators, the material is actually what I learned working in the hood.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, and the reason for that is if you can,
It's so wild.
If you can, you know, it's like Solomon. Solomon was
Yeah.
given the gift of wisdom,
For sure.
Yes.
but he also was given the gift of being David's boy.
Come on. Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
and so David built the largest empire in Israel's history, and
Yeah.
Solomon got to take it over, right?
Yeah.
You know, so Solomon was rich, you know, out of his mind.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he had 1,000 concubines and 1,000 horses. The guy had everything, you
Yup.
know,
Yeah.
and he had power and position. So he didn't really know what wisdom looked like without all the other advantages. And if you could have an experiment and go, okay, we're going to strip you of every advantage except for, let's say, wisdom.
Yeah.
Now we're going to see what wisdom can actually do. And I think what happened is when I was working with the poor and in a world with really, really dark economies, it stripped down to can you help a person change? Like, you know, I don't know what your life was like before you met Jesus, but you're probably a pretty good guy.
Overall, yeah.
I mean, you can make it sound
For
worse.
sure,
Right? You
Yeah.
know? But,
Absolutely.
But probably you were a pretty good guy, and you're probably fairly honest, and you didn't want to take advantage of people, and probably were a decent boyfriend. Are you guys married?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. Okay. You know, or you know, like you had some issues, but overall,
For sure.
you were kind.
Yeah.
You know, and so you didn't start with the 0 point because there's some good things that were there.
Yeah.
And in fact, here's an interesting thing: the more you obey the 10 Commandments when you're young, the more whole you are when you come to Jesus.
Wow.
The more you break those commands, the more broken you are when you come to Jesus.
Wow.
And so the process of
Makes
healing
sense.
isn't the same for people.
That's good.
You know, so if you never kill anyone, you're going to be less broken.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If you don't lie, you're going to be less broken.
Yep.
If you don't steal, you're going to be less broken.
Yep.
And you know, if you don't commit adultery, you're going to be less broken.
Yep.
So you're going to be less broken, and so the reparation process is faster for you. Now, if you did all that stuff, and then you come to Jesus, you're going to have a lot more damage to work with. It's not the same for everyone.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
sure.
You know?
100%.
So now I'm working with people where everything's broken,
Mm.
and so I get to see what principles actually work.
Come on.
How does a person's life actually change?
Yeah.
Which is how I wrote Uprising and how I wrote Chasing Daylight, and it's because I could see the principles that actually change people's lives.
Wow.
And same thing with Mindshift. It's like, you know, a lot of things I learned in Mindshift, I can apply at any time in my life, but I first saw them when I was working in that space.
Mm.
And of course, the more painful thing with Mindshift is that every one of those principles is something I messed up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I have a crash and burn.
It's a good way to learn it too.
Yeah, I have a crash and burn for every principle.
There you go.
That's the way to learn it.
was
That
like,
helps you become passionate about it.
yeah, you wake up that morning, you go, oh yeah, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, I need to change
Go the
this.
other way.
Yes.
Come on.
And so really Mindshift isn't like me doing research out there only.
Yeah.
It's me saying, look, every time I've violated this principle, my intention and my direction slowed down, and I lost my way.
There you go.
Mm.
And I lost momentum. And then when I applied this principle,
there.
my life moved forward faster.
Yep.
Love that.
We may all live to 75, but we will not all live the same amount of life.
Mm.
Because if you move forward really slowly, you'll barely have lived one life in 75 years.
Wow.
But if you move forward with intentionality and purpose,
Yep.
you're going to live a life that's worth 200 by 75.
Come on.
You know, and that for me is really exciting. And so anyway, you wanted to ask me about 7 frequencies.
Yes.
All right. This book came differently than each book comes in some bizarre way. You know, and I wrote The Way of the Warrior. I'm driving through Hollywood Boulevard with my wife, Kim, and I'm coming down Vine. I remember the street, you know, the old famous Hollywood and Vine. I was driving down Vine, and I heard this voice in my head that said, the warrior is not ready for battle until he has come to know peace.
Mm.
This is the way of the warrior.
So good.
And I looked at my wife and I said, I know the name of my next book and I know the first line.
Wow.
That's so
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know where it came from. I don't know how I heard it, you know, but it did sound like Ken Watanabe from The Last Samurai, his actor that I love. So it was in his voice that I heard it. You know?
That's awesome.
And so I wrote the whole book from the posture of a samurai. And
Wow.
who's teaching the younger samurai the principles in the book of
So
how to have
cool.
inner peace. Because the way of the warrior is preparing you for inner peace so that you can fight every battle. So each book has its own like unique like nuance.
Yeah.
With the 7 frequencies of communication, I developed this like 6-hour masterclass called The Art of Communication. And my son Aaron came up with the idea along with my wife, who both of them desperately wanted me to teach people how to communicate. And I just never took the time to create a process for people.
Sure.
But they just were on me so much. And finally Aaron said, look, just show up, teach everything you know about communication. We will film it. He goes, I'll package it, I'll sell it, because I hate selling. So I'm like, why create something when I'm not going to sell?
You're so good at it because selling is something you believe in, and you're not pushing it. Natural.
And so they talked me into it. I did a 6-hour course, and it did really, really well. I mean, it just sort of went out into the general market, and made the mistake of telling Aaron that I would do it 50-50. For sure. I paid him way too much.
That's awesome.
That was his first entrepreneurial leverage moment.
There you go. Oh, yeah. Let's go, Aaron.
Yeah,
good work.
Now we're fighting over percentages. And then that did super well. And then out of that, I did 10 weeks of live Q&A.
Okay.
And then I loved the live Q&A, and that's how we started the arena.
Wow.
Because I realized, hey, I love the 6-hour masterclass, but what I really love is the dynamic interaction for 10 weeks that no one knew they were buying. I did that for free. I said, hey, since you bought the masterclass, I'm gonna do 10 weeks of mentoring with you. And then everyone was like, okay, what are we gonna do when it stops? And so that group became the arena.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And so we created this global online mastermind.
Yeah.
And so then Aaron came to me and said, hey, Dad, could you create a 30-minute giveaway, like a gift, so that we could, you know how you're supposed to give things away so that people know that you exist, and then they hopefully one day come into your funnel and buy things. I'm terrible at that stuff, you know. And but he said, could you just create like a 30-minute gift on communication? So I go home on Friday and I start just thinking, processing, what could I give people? You know, what would be helpful? And so I create everything in my head. Like I write all my books in my head. I create all my talks in my head.
Wow.
And so I'm just moving into another zone. Like my kids won't even let me drive when I'm in this state because I'll turn where there's no street.
Yeah.
You know, crash into walls or trees or humans. And, you know, and I remember I was driving in the carpool lane by myself because I was talking to people in my head. And I forgot they weren't really in the car. And so I just go off into this other zone. And so I'm thinking about communication, and then I start thinking about communication frequencies. And I just start writing really fast. Like, okay, wait a minute, there's these frequencies I'm drawing. I'm mapping this thing out. And I can't sleep for 2 days. I mean, and I think on Sunday night, my wife woke up at 4.
Wow. I'm
drenched in sweat. And I'm writing and drawing, and she's like, well, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? I said, I can't stop. It's just downloading. And so I was downloading the 7 frequencies, 1 frequency at a time, and downloading all the different dynamics of it and seeing all the nuances. And it's interesting because I pretty much designed it from the frequency furthest from me to the one closest to me.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't see the one closest to me because it's me. We all have the hardest time oftentimes seeing ourselves.
Yeah.
We can see other people. You know?
For sure.
And by the time I woke up Monday morning, I had the entire universe of the 7 frequencies.
Wow.
So they had
awesome.
they had the whole studio set up.
Yeah.
And Aaron said, okay, just, you know, whatever that 30-minute gift you want to create, you know, we'll just film you and let you spontaneously, you know, just map it out. And 4 or 5 hours later, I had mapped out the entire 7 frequencies on video.
Yeah.
And he said, Dad, this isn't a giveaway. This is a universe. This is where you need to go. Like this is the future.
Wow.
And I told him, yeah, I think so. I think it may be the most important thing I've ever created.
Wow.
But sometimes you don't know that you've created something really, really unique, really special. And so then I started testing it. Like I brought my team in, we did a weekend retreat. We started mapping out everyone based on their frequencies, and it just kept getting validated and validated. It was really fun. And for the first time, they were seeing each other in a way they'd never seen each other and understanding each other in really, really unique ways. And we had one guy on our team, I think Luke, he's young, he's 22, 23 years old. And everyone was writing down what everyone's frequency was. So Luke, they're all going, he's a healer, or he's a motivator, and they all just picking. And then I paused when everyone had given their input, and Aaron goes, they're all wrong. And I said, what? He goes, Luke isn't a healer, Luke isn't a motivator, Luke is not. He goes, Luke is a commander. And everybody's like, no, he's not. No, he's not. And he goes, yeah, Luke's a commander, but he's really young. And he doesn't really know how to relate to everyone here. So he hides his frequency.
Wow.
So I said, well, there's an easy way to solve this. Luke, what are you? He goes, I'm a commander.
Wow.
And you could feel how happy he was that Aaron saw him.
That's so
it was
cool.
like this really powerful moment. And everyone sees Luke differently now because they realize he's a commander that they were not letting speak.
Wow.
Because he's so young, and he's a graphic genius and artistic genius, and he wears really bright colors and is really eccentric. And so they just assumed he had to be something that he wasn't.
For sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But when I had a real scare, it was on the arena call. I don't remember if you were there at that time, but I said, pick a TV show and I'll break down the frequencies. And everyone picked 2 shows, Friends and Succession. I didn't know Friends was still a thing. But so I looked at them. I thought, I don't really know Friends. So I'm going to do Succession because I think it's a really fascinating show. And so I go back and start watching Succession. And I have like a panic attack because I can't find a single frequency on the show, not a single character at any of the 7 frequencies. And I just thought, oh, the system doesn't work. The universe is broken.
Yeah.
And I just kind of stepped away and was anxious and really discouraged. I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? And I had this thought, or I heard this inner voice, and it said, look at the shadows, because each frequency has a shadow. And I went back to look at Succession through all the shadows, and there are 7 characters, and they all have one of the shadows.
Wow.
The reason that's a problem is because Succession doesn't have a single positive frequency in the whole show.
Wow.
In all the years. Every one of them is operating from a shadow and a negative part of who they are. And the moment I saw that, I got so excited, even though it's a terrible thing that we're having shadow communication modeled. And we have a generation that's growing up only with shadows.
Yeah.
Wow.
Correct.
Because they're not seeing the positive frequencies being expressed.
Yeah.
Right.
And because, if you're a commander and you're in the shadow, you're a dictator. If you're a motivator, but you're operating out of your shadow, you're a performer.
Wow.
Ooh.
If you're a challenger, but you're operating in your shadow, you're a manipulator.
Wow.
And so with
That's
each
so genius.
one of them, there's like this powerful, dynamic there. And if you've ever seen Succession, that's exactly what you have. You have a commander and a challenger and a motivator, and you have a healer and a professor and a seer. They're all the shadow of that frequency.
That's so good.
And now one of the people on my team went ahead and did Friends, and it works.
Wow.
But they're not shadows; they're just goofy lights.
Yeah.
But I didn't know the characters well enough. But one of my team sent me, he goes, "Hey, Friends works perfect," and they sent them to me. So it's kind of cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's what the 7 frequencies is really all about. The book comes out August 8th. Well, actually, it's a special edition that comes out August 8th.
Got it.
And everyone who pre-orders gets that one.
Let's go.
Very
And
cool.
then when we come to regular orders, they'll come out at the end of August. And there's an assessment that you can also access and take if you want to learn your 7 frequencies.
So cool.
So I'm excited. I think it's going to be one of the most
Let's go.
exciting universes that people will be able to step into and understand themselves better, understand their friends better.
And
It'll help you with sales. It'll help you
For sure.
with relationships.
Yeah.
Help you with leadership. There's just no area in life that it won't bring so much light and help to.
I agree completely. Leadership is all about understanding, the roles of people and like you said, making people feel heard, making people feel seen. And Aaron was able to do that. That's so impactful.
Yeah, and you see all 7 frequencies in Jesus too, which is really cool.
Wow.
Because you can hear the frequency of the healer when Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, I'll give you rest." And there he is as the healer, and you can see him as the challenger when he goes into the temple and he says, "Will you make my Father's house a den of robbers?"
Wow.
And he takes the whip and thrashes them out. Right? You can hear the commander when he looks at the early disciples and he says, "Come follow me." He doesn't ask, he just tells them, he commands them to come. You can hear Jesus in the professor frequency when he says, "Is it not written?" and he's taking truth and transmitting it across the way. You can see Jesus as a seer, and I think it's a nuanced seer when he looks at the masses and he says, you are the light of the world and the salt of the earth. Because seers are not always just about seeing a big vision for a company. It's seeing the potential in people and calling that out of them. And you see the maven in Jesus when he says things like, destroy this temple and I'll raise it back up on the third day. And no one understood what he was saying. And everyone misinterpreted his words.
Wow.
I think he was talking about destroying the building, but he was talking about destroying his body.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's to me, it's a beautiful thing when you look at all the frequencies, you know, and then you see that Jesus expresses them all.
When you tie in all the frequencies, like I love that you were able to do that. Was just so deep.
That was awesome.
When you tie in all the frequencies, one thing that you did this past Sunday at Vue Church is you were able to communicate in different languages because it's not what you were saying. You're able to see, you talk about the guy who's translating in German.
Yeah.
It's about human connection.
Yeah.
So my question to you is like on human connection and understand frequencies, you've been around the world, traveled and seen so many different cultures. What's like the most common thing that you see in highly effective communicators, or what's like a commonality trait that you see in people who know how to step into high levels of communication?
That's a really great question, by the way. And I remember when I first went to Korea, and Koreans are an interesting culture, and they're very almost like a monolithic culture, and so they don't have a lot of outside influences, and are very closed in many ways to outside influences. And so when they brought me in, it was an interesting situation, and I think it was a church of like 30 to 50,000 people. So it was a pretty good size. You know,
one church?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's a mega church.
Yeah. No, there's a church there of nearly of 1 million.
Okay.
And so they have very, very large churches. This was a mid-sized church.
Wow.
And when I spoke there the very first time, and it was a conference with pastors and stuff, and from all over the country, they took me to dinner, and there was probably 10 of the leading pastors in Korea. And the first thing they asked me is, how did you dissect the Korean code? Because you somehow know the Korean code and broke it down. And and it was one of the greatest compliments I ever gotten, because they didn't know how I knew them.
Wow.
And there's a layer of us that is what I would maybe describe as image management. There's a layer of us that we create so that we can fit into the world. And every culture has that. I was just in Malaysia 2 weeks ago. And with Kevin and Esther Liu, they're amazing people. And they were asking me, okay, what frequencies do you see with us? And I said, well, to be perfectly frank, I don't see any frequency when you're talking to me. It's like white noise.
Wow.
Because you're so deferential and honoring that you hide who you are. So I can only see the frequencies when I watch how you interact with each other.
Wow.
They go, what? And I go, yeah, so you're a commander, even though you act like you're the sweetest, kindest, softest person to me.
So good.
But you command everyone behind the scenes that is part of your inside world. And then, you know, I went through and I said, it's like watching. So you have to, it's almost like you have to be a cat burglar. You have to learn how to pick the lock. To listen to the clicks. And I've just become really, really good at that over decades and decades of interacting with people. So I listen very carefully. I pay attention to not what people are saying, but what they're not saying. And I have a basic rule. Whatever they tell me isn't important.
Wow. That's so good.
It's what they don't tell me that's important. Because, look, if someone came to your house, and I don't know, you know, maybe in your house, everyone has to take their shoes off before they walk inside, right?
I'm Filipino, like absolutely. That. You know that's right.
So I take that for you. But you don't expect all the white guys to know that. So you have to tell them.
You do.
Or you leave on purpose a pair of shoes out there so they can have a visual instruction.
Yes.
You leave your shoes here.
Absolutely.
Right? But you probably would never, ever, ever think of having a sign or a cue to, oh, and by the way, you don't take off your pants.
Some of my friends,
Right.
I leave my shorts out all the time.
So
For
when
sure.
you go, hey, take off your shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't go, but leave your pants on. Because what you don't tell them is the assumed.
That's so good.
It's a part
That's
of your culture.
so good.
What you do tell them, that's the easy stuff.
Yes.
And so when, and a lot of times, to be frank with you, when Americans travel the world,
Yeah.
they always think their culture is right.
Mm.
So they don't care about what the nuances of other cultures.
Right.
They
So
think the
good.
world should adjust to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
My wife and I, when we went to France and Italy, and I love both of those nations.
So great.
When we left France, she said, "I'm never going back to France until the entire nation apologizes to me."
Wow.
She was just offended
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah.
They don't like Americans. And, but I had a way. See, one, I grow my beard, so I look less, I'm American. I look more Latin or international.
Yeah.
Sure.
But you see, this is what I do. When I walk into a restaurant, I know that if I start in English, they're going to treat me really badly.
Mm.
So I begin like this. Hola, ¿cómo están? Estoy encantado para estar aquí con ustedes.
Wow.
And they'll look at me and go, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. And in French they'll say, I don't speak Spanish.
Wow.
And I'll understand a little bit of French, and I'll say, no hables español.
Yeah.
No español. Pues, hables inglés. And they go, English, yes.
Yeah.
I said, okay, let's
So
both
smart.
speak English.
That's so
Wow.
smart. That's so smart.
That's so
And
good.
So the moment we meet at a third language, we're both on the same level.
Wow. That's
So
so
fire.
good.
And the reason they don't like you if you only speak English is that you think everyone should have to speak English.
Mm.
You go to other countries and you think those nations should learn your language.
Wow.
But when you know another language and they know another language, they do know English. They just don't tell Americans.
Wow. That's so
And
good.
then they'll meet you there. It's learning the nuances of different cultures. And so what I do is I just go and have conversations and I listen a lot.
Mm.
And I listen to what people are saying to each other, not what they say to me, because I'm the outsider. They're going to lie to me.
Yeah.
Not on purpose.
Yeah.
They're just going to lie to me because everyone has image management. And so they're going to paint a picture of who they think I need them to be.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And then once I begin to realize, okay, or that isn't the true picture of them, I only watch how they interact with each other. And so I will set up scenarios where they have to interact with each other rather than with me.
Yeah.
And they begin to reveal themselves.
Mm.
It becomes a really, really fun thing. So I just love it. It's like decoding people.
I love that.
It's really fun.
It's so great. Well, my last question is, you just do such a great job of balancing everything. Like you said, some entrepreneurs, like, you got to have one thing, but it's like when you love Jesus and you love fashion and you love business, you love coaching, how do you balance it, stay married, have a great relationship with your son? I would really that's ultimately where we want to be, have a great family. But, entrepreneurs talk about sacrificing everything. It's like, you got to be all in. It's like, we want to have Jesus. We want to have Jesus at the forefront. We want to have our family. We want to have a great workplace, a great balance. Like, how would you just speak into that for us that want to step into that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's so many different things you can say, but it really comes down to you have to marry the right person.
Come on.
And that is the most important choice outside of giving your life to Jesus you'll ever make.
Mm.
Because there really are no perfect systems to keep a marriage together.
Mm.
And there is no way of living a perfectly balanced life. So you have to have someone who just loves being in the same universe together.
Come on.
I am not the guy you want coaching you on how to have balance. I am skewed.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my wife doesn't have balance.
Yeah.
I just learned how to operate. I learned how to ride the comet of Kim. And I could have gotten frustrated how many times she goes to Africa, or I could just celebrate it and finance it. We were having a conversation last night. I mean, our house has been absolutely like destroyed in LA. They found black mold all over the house.
Oh my gosh.
I've been in a hospital in and out. I've had these cluster migraine headaches for so many months that I was vomiting and on the ground. I mean, so sick. I didn't know if I could survive it. And they came through and they found so much mold and so much, even like mushroom spurs that are dangerous and spores. And we paid all this money to try to get it found, and then we paid all this money to try to get it removed. And then they came to us and said, we can't remove it. It's in the walls, and your part of your house is going to be destroyed. And so we're literally walking. I walk in the door into plastic because our downstairs is all like, it looks like it's a crime scene. You go up the stairs in plastic. Most of the house is in plastic. Our master bedroom we haven't been in months. We're staying in a little room in the side. In our back house where I have my office right now, completely condemned.
Jeez.
Has to be destroyed. And it's probably going to be about $500,000
Oh my God.
process for us. And then we had someone who we really love who came to us yesterday and said, hey, is it possible for you to help me like financially? And my wife grew up an orphan. She was abandoned when she was 8 years old and lived in a foster home from 8 to 18.
Wow.
In complete dismal poverty. And, so it right now it's like we can't pay for all this. We can't fix it. We're stuck. And then I was sick for so many months that I couldn't work.
Oh my God.
And so then we lost all of that income and all these things. And I remember last night on the phone with her, I said, you and me, we used to sleep on the floor.
Wow.
Remember? She said, yeah. I said, because we couldn't afford a bed. And we found our way through. This is who we are. And we're going to help that person. Wow. And I said, because it's who you are. You're not the person who lives in fear. And I said, if we help this person, it solves a lifelong problem for them.
Yeah.
If we help ourselves, we fix a bathroom. We fix a master bedroom. We fix a back house. We can live without all those because we used to sleep on the floor.
Yeah.
And so first she was crying, and then she was so excited because it was just remembering who we are.
Yeah.
And the way a marriage works isn't that you have to always figure out how all the time schedules work. You just have to have someone who loves the fight with you. Who just they want to bear the same wounds. They want to take on the same challenges. They want to fight the same battles, and they want to do it with you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so life doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be good. It just has to be your own adventure together. And that to me, is really, really exciting. And a part of it for me is in explaining is there's almost like 2 or 3 ways to approach this, but one of them is we have to hold on to what we have and stop helping other people till we fix our life. Or I need to become more creative, more entrepreneurial, and create more wealth so I can not only fix these problems, but help people.
Amen.
Correct.
And what was in my mind last night is I'm never going to be in this financial situation again where I can't help someone I love completely. And it's actually creates this drive inside of me because, I don't know why, but people think creating wealth is like unethical or it's wrong.
It's weird.
If you love Jesus, you
pious,
love being poor.
Right.
Pious poor, no.
And man, I went to bed last night going, no one can understand the opportunities that I have to help people.
Yes.
And how much I love doing that.
Yes.
And so I woke up this morning going, I'm going to go find a way to just be freaking wealthy.
Yeah.
Come on.
I love that.
And elevate beyond where I am now and just crush it and make it happen. Not just because I'd like to get the plastic out of my house, but because in the middle of that, I want to help everyone that needs me in their life as well.
When you met Kim, were you already like deep in your walk with Jesus? Was she along with you in that ride? Was she already in love with Jesus when you met her?
She was already in love with Jesus. She was like super solid. I was a little wild.
Yeah.
I had just come to faith.
And then,
but I was still.
She the one in the prison?
No.
Okay. Sorry, Kim.
No, she's one of those solid people who loves Jesus and always has, and
Yeah.
And I've always been, I know Jesus without any doubt. I'm a little confused about Christianity.
For sure. Come on. Us too.
And I don't
I understand that.
always feel really comfortable in the church. And,
Yeah.
and you have to understand, like, even great churches I feel uncomfortable in because the language is so geared just to Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my friends are atheists and agnostics and Buddhists and Hindus and Muslims. And so I don't even do things usually with words like Anointed Ones because my world is so out there.
Yeah, for sure.
That I try to really be aware of.
Well, thanks for doing this, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is it's about business.
Let me tell you, but I'm doing it with you because you joined the arena and became a part of our community. And to me, I believe in community and doing life with people.
For sure.
So, David, the moment you said you're coming to Miami to do my podcast, I didn't even know what your podcast was. Like,
Amazing,
I told Aaron, it's David Carpenter. I'm going. I said yes. And he goes, "This is awesome, Dad. This is great."
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, I just, when you get to my place in life, you just realize it's really all about people.
Yes.
Everything else, no matter how much money you have, you end up spending it.
Yeah.
And you end, hopefully you'll invest it or give it
For
away.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's the relationships that you make that make life really, really fun and really beautiful.
That's so beautiful. One last question, personally.
You keep saying that.
That's my last one. This is my last one, Erwin.
I already asked my last
I know.
one.
He sold himself last. I have one last one. I'll close. This is the close right here.
This is the close.
And I actually wrote this one down. It's like, I wanted to know if Jesus is sitting here in the room physically with us, what's one thing you would ask him or tell him if he was sitting right in front of us?
Well, I don't think I would tell him anything if he was sitting in front of me.
Yeah.
Or what would you ask him? Yeah, I would love to know what Erwin would say.
Wow. I ask him so many things. I'm trying to think what's something that he hasn't answered yet. All my questions go to things like, are there going to be like other universes and other dimensions that we're going to get to help you create and design or navigate?
So cool.
Because I just think that God's a God of wonder and surprise.
Yeah.
And we have a very limited view of like heaven and eternity and of God. And I'm like, I think the question I would ask is, what's one thing I don't even know to ask that you want to tell me?
Yeah.
That's so good.
I think my questions would be too small.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Erwin, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure to have you here on the podcast.
So awesome.
Guys, this has been a pleasure. We have an event coming here on November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd here in Miami. Look forward to seeing you guys. As always, Bible studies. And lastly, guys, may the Lord bless you, may he keep you, may he make his face shine upon you, establish you, and give you peace. Ayo,
Let's
flow.
It's awesome.
Wow. Awesome. Let's go, Erwin.